So for those of you who were at our last meeting, we talked about dysautonomia and the fact that October is Dysautonomia Awareness Month. Also, we're focusing on POTS for this season instead of dysautonomia as a whole, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's a very popular, quote unquote, condition under dysautonomia.
You should have control.
It's not letting me. Oh,
There you go.
There we go. So we're continuing to celebrate Dysautonomia Awareness Month. Make noise for turquoise. Sarah and I are both wearing our dysautonomia gear. I have a hoodie on and she has the Dysautonomia International shirt.
I've got compression tights. Does that count?
Yes. So what is dysautonomia? Sarah, want to go over a brief review?
So it is a dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So there's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Long story short, it controls things that happen automatically in your body, such as blood pressure, heart rate, blood vessel dilation, pupil dilation, digestion, breathing, body temperature, sweat production, etc., etc. So all of those things. And we're focusing on POTS, which postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome means change in position, raises the heart rate, and can lower and or raise blood pressure.
So a general overview of everything we covered last meeting was that POTS is an altering condition that few people, even doctors, know about. I don't know how many doctors you guys have gone through, but I've gone through at least 7 or 8 that had no idea what it was. And it affects about 70 million people worldwide. And right now, the average diagnosis time is about 24 months and with 7 doctors seen. So kind of around.
Thankfully has decreased.
Yes, which has decreased. I think in like 2015, it was 6 years.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So POTS is a systemic condition. It's a chronic condition. It's something that doesn't go away for most people. Some people do age out of it as they get older, but most do not. And a lot of people are getting POTS after having COVID. It's like a thing that happens after long haul COVID. So that's causing more awareness of POTS to be seen, and a lot of funding is going into POTS research, which is great, but not so great that it's affecting a lot more people now.
Yeah.
So like Sarah went over, it goes over the autonomic nervous system is affected by it. So a lot of different symptoms happen in a lot of different organ systems. So a very common one amongst most people with POTS is brain fog, where it takes a longer time for people to think about what they're trying to say. As I explained in one of the meetings, like I apologize for me like pausing a lot and thinking, because that's brain fog at work for me. One of my most common symptoms. Yeah, all the symptoms listed are
other symptoms. Yeah, I have a lot of those.
Amazing, there's so many.
And not everyone with POTS has all of those symptoms, and not everyone with those symptoms has POTS, but you know, it kind of goes from in. So I have given you guys a rundown of my story before. I think the only one who hasn't heard it before is Adam. So I will do a very executive summary because I do not want to bore anyone here. But essentially, I had a tilt table test done in 2018, which confirmed that I do have POTS. And I remember my doctor saying that I was in a subgroup of POTS, and the only one that I can deduce without actually having my tilt table test in front of me is hypovolemic POTS, which is associated with abnormally low levels of blood. So most people who have POTS have lower blood volume than everyone else, but this is like a different even category where they have even lower amounts than most people with POTS do. So I'm not 100% sure I have this. I tried finding my tilt table test, but you'll see on the next slide why I wasn't able to find it. Me in the winter, me in the summer, that's an example of that kind of picture. I feel like any amount of wind in Chicago, I'm just hiding underneath all of my layers. I have my heater running in my room right now, and our apartment is normal to everyone else. I'm wearing a beanie and a hoodie. It's just cold. I'm always cold.
Whereas I am always hot.
Yeah, Sarah's in a different footprint. She'll talk about that later. But this picture shows all of my printed medical records. Nope. All my printed medical records. So there's 3 giant, I don't know how many gallon size bins. This is all the stuff that I've needed to bring to doctors at some point in my life. My mom is very organized in terms of keeping things in binders, and also very unorganized, but I do not blame her because that's a lot of stuff to deal with. And that's not even everything. There's some stuff online that I have either lost access to or is just online and not in paper form. But I could not find my tilt table test nonetheless in all of this mess. So I cannot share it with you today, but Sarah has hers, so she'll talk through that later. But it took me 4.5 years to get diagnosed with POTS, 5.5 years to get diagnosed with everything I have. And I've seen at least 7 or 8 doctors. So long journey for a lot of people with POTS. And we have Sarah and Renee to share their journeys.
Are there any questions for Stephanie specifically? You can either type it in the chat or say it out loud.
Mm-hmm. If not, that's okay. I've kind of, I'm beating a dead horse at this point with everything that I've said over the past few meetings. All right, well, let's move on to Renee. Renee is very generous offering her time and explaining her journey and research to us. So everyone welcome Renee.
Hello, everybody. So I guess I'm going to try to click on these slides, see how that goes. I again want to apologize. I've been super out of breath today. So click. I think there's a little bit or a lot of lag. I'm going to click down.
There you
go. Wait, back one. Oh, okay, we missed the first slide. That's okay. So hi, everybody. Thanks, Stephanie and Sarah, for inviting me today. I really love this group, and I think it's super valuable to the young medical professionals, and definitely as patients. So like I said, I'm Renee Pond, and I'm here to share. So I'm a bit newer to POTS compared to Stephanie and Sarah. I've been living with POTS for over 3 years, and I was just diagnosed over a year ago. I'm from the Chicago suburbs, like a lot of you, but I'm currently living in Atlanta, finishing up my master's in public health. I'm trying to click. Okay, there we are. So you guys have kind of run through the basics. We'll skip that one. So one of the things that I wanted to share today was a bit of data, because I feel like the word postural orthostatic tachycardia really just describe one symptom, and it doesn't really effectively describe the whole POTS experience or what's causing it. And the acronym itself is just not very meaningful, and it's kind of cute, honestly. So I think that can lead to some misconceptions and definitely a lot of underestimation. So as you guys know, it's a lot more than tachycardia. So the figures in the slide are from one of my favorite researchers, Dr. Satish Raj. And basically, he demonstrates that before being put on a high salt diet, POTS patients have a 12 to 13% decreased total blood volume. And then increasing salt and water helps to expand that blood volume. But there's still a red blood cell volume deficit of about 17% with or without the salt water. So there's no improvement in red blood cell volume. I don't know if you focus specifically on one type of POTS or excluded hyperadrenergic POTS or something like that. But obviously these are all averages. So our problem is we don't have enough red blood cells, basically. And then on top of that, there's also emerging evidence of autoimmunity to the alpha-1 adrenergic receptor in POTS patients, which is the receptor that regulates vasoconstriction in response to physical activity, which is why it's hard for us to exercise. And also it is the receptor for norepinephrine, which is very important for memory, so hence the brain fog. So there's a lot going on. And there's a few other receptors that have shown some autoimmunity. So taken together, we can understand that POTS patients have moderate to severe hypovolemia and also problems circulating their limited blood volume. So it's a bit tough. That's my cat. I have some problems clicking to the next slide. Oh, there we are. Maybe you guys want to do the slides. It's kind of not always working. So, so how does POTS affect me? Obviously, a lot of these symptoms aren't very visible. So I have to drink about 6 liters of water and at least 5 grams of salt a day to keep the nausea at bay. I can't read, stand, or interact with people for extended periods of time without nausea, dizziness, and shortness of breath. So my thesis has been super hard because I can't keep reading. I'm done after a few hours. I can't exercise in typical sense of the word yet. I do wake up feeling sick most days, and it takes like a few hours to, be in a place where I can do some things. So I've got a lot of ADHD and brain fog, which are different. I think the brain fog is from, the blood not getting to your head and the red blood cells. And the ADHD is probably related to the norepinephrine dysregulation. So there's waxing and waning symptoms. For a while, I thought it was just impossible to predict, but I've understood that it definitely correlates with my menstrual cycle. I don't stand in the shower the whole time at the moment, and it takes a little bit for me to recover afterwards as well. And then there's post-exertional malaise, which is not something I experience that much anymore because I have managed to avoid it better. And there's a bunch of other things too. Like, for example, our pupils don't dilate well. I remember once I was stepping into puddles after the sunset because I couldn't see them, but my friend could. The next slide here. There we are. So I was going to also share with you some heart rate data so you guys can kind of visualize what's going on for me and probably a lot of other POTS patients. So these pics are me at my best, believe it or not. I would not be going to, this was at a wedding, I wouldn't be going to a wedding if it wasn't a good day. So as you see, my heart rate was just rising all day long because I wasn't able to lay down and take some horizontal time, as I call it, during the wedding. So I just went up and up and up and up. And then the next one is me after a shower. So you can kind of predict that showers are pretty tough for some POTS patients, probably a lot of POTS patients, because of the heat and the standing and the movement. Like I said, I sit in the shower most of the time or some of the time, and I have to kind of recover afterwards. But on this day, I decided to see what would be going on with my heart rate if I did my pre-POTS routine, which is to take a shower, standing up, and then brush my teeth and brush my hair. And it was pretty exhausting. I was, maintaining 140 to 155 during most of that. And right at the end there is when I finally just went ahead and laid down on the floor. So it's pretty exhausting, and I don't do it because it's exhausting. And also one thing to note is that the effects kind of last for several hours. So our autonomic nervous system, like Sarah described, there's problems activating it and deactivating it. So I'm in this probably like adrenergic state, and it just doesn't really settle down for several hours. So showers are pretty annoying, to be honest. Next slide, here we go. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to describe my life before POTS. I think that's important. So I went to UIUC, which you guys are probably familiar with. I studied molecular and cellular biology, Portuguese language. In high school, I played 2 varsity sports and marching band and all IPs. I played travel, softball all summer. I played softball on the varsity team, graduated top of my class in both high school and college, did a double major in college and a minor. Was really into foreign language. I went out like every weekend, had a lot of energy. And I really thought I could just, I don't know, we're all just young and naive. You just think you can handle anything life throws at you. So things were going really well for me, and I, was ready to just take on life. So I never saw this coming, and I don't think anybody does. So you guys are all pre-med, right?
No, not all. I don't think everyone here is pre-med. Sarah is pre-PA. I think everyone else is. We're all pre-health people right now.
Well, basically, it's weird because when you have a consultation with a patient, you don't really get to see who they are outside of the consultation, or who they were in the case of some kind of life-changing chronic illness. So it's important to remember that for the future. So my journey, this is a big mountain with a big old rain cloud. It was not a nice time. So first 2 years of my symptoms were a bit blurry. It was right after I graduated undergrad. I started more or less developing symptoms. Yeah. It came on a bit slow for me. I think it's kind of because I had a lot of muscles. I was super active. Maybe, I know for some people it comes on really suddenly. So the first person that I described my symptoms to was my rheumatologist over at Rush. Because what was interesting is they would completely resolve when I would get infusions for this psoriatic arthritis. So I thought, okay, this could be related to my autoimmune disease, like everything's wonderful and beautiful after my infusion. So I told him all of these symptoms, and like I told him all of the symptoms, and there's a lot of symptoms. And I thought I was providing him with information to make a correct diagnosis, right? But I think he just took it as, evidence of me being a hypochondriac. Like, how could you have 20 new things wrong with you? So he kind of rolled his eyes, and that was the end of that. And I actually was about to pass out in the office later that day. So I had to lock myself in the bathroom to lay on the floor because I didn't want him to roll his eyes at me again. So for those first 2 years that I was having symptoms, I was a scribe, and it was near impossible. So I started taking Adderall. I was taking the max dose of Adderall, and I still couldn't stay standing for more than like 10 minutes while I was working. And especially in the afternoon, it would get worse. Like, I couldn't type coherently. I would have motor issues. Like, I would actually have issues clicking where I need to click. It was really crazy. My fingertips were permanently numb for months. Out of breath, of course. And everybody just thought I had a bad attitude because I obviously looked exhausted and miserable all the time. And it was a lot. So I went to the ER a few times, obviously didn't help. And then I also lost 20 pounds. I was losing my hair. It's covered in bruises. My legs would sting and tingle and itch. I don't know if you guys had that. It was just very strange. I still can't explain that all. But in general, my life was just kind of spiraling out of control. And I decided I couldn't hold a job anymore. So I thought, how about grad school? I'll apply to grad school, and that will buy me time to get better. And I, won't have to hold a job, which I can't really do anymore. So I went ahead and did that because otherwise I would have no job, I would be broke, and I have to start paying my loans, right? So I did that, and I was a great applicant. I was no longer the applicant that they saw because I was so sick, which I felt a little bit guilty about, but got into some great programs and my plan was working. So where are we? Yeah. So I did that, and I decided, all right, I don't know what to do here. I'm just going to practice. This is a skill. I can learn how to hide this better. It's absolutely miserable, but I was just going to learn to hide it, I guess. So that did not work out. I think everybody saw how miserable I was. And I just didn't make friends. Things didn't go well with my advisors or, you know, just anyone. It's when it's really bad, like you're just not really there. So things didn't go well for me. But and then it got so bad that I was about to quit my program because I couldn't shower, grocery shop, cook for myself. Couldn't even take out my own trash. So things were getting pretty dire. Sorry for the yawn. So at that point, I decided to get super aggressive, like last-ditch effort to fix my problems. I went ahead and scheduled 4 different consultations with specialists in cardiology, endocrinology, neurology, and also general medicine. And I really was starting to connect the dots at that point. And going into those 4 consultations, I was kind of like, oh, this is POTS. Okay, I got it. So I went into there, I'm like, hello, I'm diagnosing myself with POTS. Please run all the tests, rule everything else out. And lucky for me, they're like, okay, yes, it's POTS. So I continued my program. So I thought there was probably hope I could finish it. Things would get better, right? So I did get better, but still very miserable, very low quality of life for a long time. And I definitely could not keep up with the demands, like taking showers, you know, just all the little things. So I tried to get academic accommodations. And even though my cardiologist diagnosed me with POTS, it didn't seem she knew enough about POTS to actually be all that helpful. So when I went to her for accommodations, she was like, I don't think the brain fog's related, which is just ridiculous. So I hope she's Googled it since then, but yeah. So that brings us to about now. I ended up having to delay my graduation, but I am chugging along. And yeah, that was probably the past year or two. I actually just published a paper. I found out yesterday, so that's exciting. But something I really want to talk about, next slide, is why this debilitating condition is being neglected. So like I said, I've been a student of public health for the past 2 years. So I've really had the opportunity to understand, you know, the larger context and why this is happening to us. So one key theme is that social factors drive health disparities. And this is something you'll definitely see as you go on to gain clinical experience and practice medicine or whatever else you end up doing. And I think there's definitely a bit of a public perception issue with POTS. So as we discussed, the average POTS patient is healthy looking young woman in her late teens and early 20s, complaining of symptoms that seem like anxiety if you don't listen closely. So it's kind of hard, it's not visible. And also at the onset of POTS, we're just in a stage of life where we're not quite standing on our own 2 feet. We're kind of relying on our parents. And if you're in high school, you're completely relying on your parents, or in middle school. So for me, when I had the onset of my POTS, I instantly became disabled. So that's one tick. I was very broke because I just didn't have energy to do anything, and I was trying to fix myself. So I was spending everything I had. And I'm just too sick to advocate for myself. So part of me thinks that just, the fact that we're women, our age at onset, and all of the factors, related to being debilitated kind of just make it hard for us to advocate for ourselves, I guess. So all this sucks, but why do POTS patients deserve research funding and healthcare dollars that could go to another cause? I think that should be pretty clear, but just in case, I wanted to introduce the concept of DALYs. I don't know, you guys may already know about DALYs. It's disability adjusted life years, and they are used as a metric to kind of help decision makers and researchers understand the impact of a disease. So for instance, public health funders or just public funders of health research can use DALYs or look at DALYs to decide how to allocate money. So I thought we'd do a fun activity where we would look at the NIH's allocations based on DALYs. If you didn't know, the NIH is the world's largest public funder of health research. So we're going to look at how they have funded POTS and diseases that are kind of similar to POTS. So COPD is one of those conditions that they compare the symptomatology of COPD and heart failure to POTS. It's kind of, you know, the most similar, I guess. Multiple sclerosis is not POTS, but I figured, oh my, this is supposed to be prevalence, not a dollar sign. My bad. Okay, multiple sclerosis actually has more like 500,000 to 700,000 people in the US. So these dollar signs up here are actually supposed to be prevalences of, you know, this condition in the US. So I want you guys to kind of take a look at the data. It's a little bit hard to read, but if you just skip right to the DALYs, usually the amount of DALYs should correlate with the funding, the public health funding and research funding that a specific condition gets. And as you can see here, POTS has had no funding from the NIH up until last year, and it was just 3 million. Meanwhile, Lyme disease, for instance, which is actually very similar, and it's one of the causes of POTS, you know, they contribute like 15,000 DALYs, and they've had at least 20 million in funding since 2008 and was before that. So it just doesn't make sense. This is not quite right. Yeah, so I'm not sure if the NIH is aware of DALYs associated with POTS. And I'm probably hitting time limit soon. So overall, I wanted to just communicate that POTS really challenges a lot of our assumptions around health conditions, and yeah. And I think it's kind of one of the reasons that it's been so neglected in the past decades. A lot of times, you know, people think, oh, if a person looks young and healthy, they can't have a heart condition, or that POTS is probably less prevalent and less serious than diseases that we're more familiar with. And, you know, I guess we would all think like, all right, you have POTS, well, it's debilitating, but surely there's effective treatments for that. There's not. I'm a year in and my life is still nothing like it used to be. I do have hope, you know, I'll improve to a degree, but it's just, yeah, not what you would expect. But there is hope. Next slide. So these are some of the leading research institutions that are on the cutting edge of dysautonomia research. Well, except for this one, this is Dysautonomia International. It's our beloved advocacy group, the only people doing something, it feels like. And obviously there's the Mayo Clinic. That's where a lot of young POTSies are sent when they're trying to get diagnosed. And Harvard and Stanford have autonomic clinics. Vanderbilt's really great too. And then this one was, you may not recognize this, but Metrodora Institute was founded this month. And I'm really excited about it. It was founded by a Facebook executive who developed POTS in the past year or two. And obviously she was horrified at how she was treated by the medical system, and what few options there were considering the quality of life impact. So she had the resources to do something about it. So she founded this institute, and her goal is going to produce all of the data that hasn't been collected in the past decades, so that we can find a cure and we have all the information we need to actually treat POTS patients. And that's about it. All I've got.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And if anyone has any questions for Renee, please speak up or type them in chat. And if you're interested in learning more about POTS on the daily, Dysautonomia International has a great Instagram page up and running, and we constantly share their posts on our stories on our Instagram. So if you're interested in learning more about POTS just casually on the daily, follow them. They're a very good resource.
Do you have any questions for Renee specifically?
I love questions. Oh, yay, we have a question.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your story. I was wondering, did you mention like what your specific research is about?
Oh, yeah. So actually I got involved, and so I'm doing something called a practicum, and I did a literature review on comorbidities of HIV. So HIV is associated with a bunch of inflammatory comorbidities because, having a chronic virus is very inflammatory. So what I did was I compared the prevalence and severity and like the onset of several comorbidities. Like we did hypertension, hyperlipidemia, various metabolic disorders, all of the chronic metabolic syndrome diseases. And we compared outcomes in men and women, because historically women have been underrepresented in clinical research and all the research that follows really. So essentially all of these drugs were designed, these toxic drugs were designed with men in mind. And turns out the outcome was that women had, a higher prevalence and greater severity of these comorbidities overall, yet they're still severely underrepresented. So yeah, that was the point. The point is women's health suffers if it's not studied.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
And I actually have a question. Do you know what triggered your POTS to happen?
Yeah, there was just like a lot of things at once. So my last year of undergrad, so I have psoriatic arthritis and my toes kind of hurt a lot. So it was just getting worse, and I didn't feel like my medicine was doing anything anymore. So I went off my medicine. So I went off my immunosuppressive medication. So I feel like my immune system just had free reign to do all sorts of crazy things. And I was also under a lot of stress, and I was traveling a lot. I did a solo backpack through Europe. I did a month in India. I actually had some kind of virus in India, so maybe that contributed. I don't know. There was a lot at once. I was working 60 hours as a scribe. My immune system was just doing whatever it wanted for the first time in a long time. And then I also lived in a very moldy house, which I think also triggered my immune system pretty severely. So yeah, in short, it was just like the perfect storm.
Yep.
Cool. So
Well,
now
thanks very
shares.
much for sharing your story.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. So, this. So I have POTS. I also have a lot of other conditions. This is the brief story. So I was born February 2000. June 2014, I went to a sleepaway camp. There turned out an ovarian cyst and some sort of unknown, possibly virus. We're not sure exactly. I came home with a fever. Then in July of that year, went to France for family vacation. While there, I got a constant headache. August of that year, I was diagnosed with new daily persistent headache with migraines. And my neurologist, who was at the time I was seeing, said I was depressed because I wasn't exercising. So I was put on antidepressants, and that is what started my POTS. It's possible that the unknown illness contributed to it, but it was when I started that medicine that it really kicked in and it hit hard. I was like, I remember sitting on the steps just shaking because I was feeling so bad and I couldn't move because my heart rate was so high. And yeah. So then that same October, went to my pediatrician, who thankfully had gone to a conference on POTS the week before. So she was like, hey, I know what this is. And this is why, especially, I'm so adamant about, especially doctors knowing, because I knew the same month that I had it what it was. But I said earlier, the average is 24 months. So, and then in December, I was officially diagnosed with it. October of 2018, my diagnosis changed to hyperadrenergic POTS. Today, I finally graduated high school at 21, and I have 9 diagnoses now and probably still more. This is a list of all of the POTS meds I have been on. A lot. Thankfully, this is what I'm on now. So still in a good amount, but, and even with that, okay, and here's the other things that help me a lot. Liquid IV, the holy grail. Salt stick, salt, those are my meds, compression socks. I haven't needed pulsometer and heart blood pressure cuff as much, but I do still use a shower chair. I don't have a port, but a lot of people with POTS need to have IV meds, so they get a port put in their chest so they can have constant fluids. Tilt table test. So for a 21-year-old, average heart rate is between 60 and an absolute maximum of 200. Then that's when you would like sprinting for your life. And just to quickly show you here, this was when I was laying down. I had a heart rate of 208, which is over that maximum of like sprinting for your life while I was laying down. And this shows my tilt table test. You can see here on the left, a normal person's, it's fairly steady. It, you know, goes up and down a little bit, but then mine goes all over the place. Numbers are not where they should be at all. My heart rate went up to 150. My blood pressure dropped, my oxygen dropped. So this is before I was diagnosed with hyperadrenergic POTS. It was regularly going up to like 150, and now one time 200. And after I was diagnosed with hyperadrenergic POTS and put on the correct meds, I now usually maximum of like 120-ish, maybe 130. It's definitely a lot better. Still very high, but a lot better. Pros and cons of hyperadrenergic POTS. Long story short, there are a lot of cons, but there are some pros. One of my funniest ones is, since I do have mast cell activation syndrome, I have a lot of allergic reactions to things, but because my adrenaline is always high, I have a built-in EpiPen, so I'm good. But good thing is I've made a lot of friends, including Stephanie. We met at the Dysautonomia conference here in this picture. That was 2018? No, yes, 2018. And we also saw each other at the Dysautonomia conference 2019. Me and my friend have made videos for the Project for Awesome to raise awareness and money for dysautonomia. I have spoken to my state representative done that once. Forget exactly what we were doing that year, but there's a whole group of us after the Dysautonomia conference went to DC and talked to state representatives. Caroline is my really good friend, and this is Laura, my other really good friend. And I'm from Philly. This is the one of the towers, and in October for Dysautonomia Awareness Month, they light it up and put, Dysautonomia Awareness Month on it. And usually a group of us get together and take pictures with it. And then this was a POTS get together that we had for local people at my house. And that is it. Any questions for me?
Can you briefly go over what your specific subtype of POTS is for those who do not know?
Sorry, I meant to go over that. Let me go back a little bit. Oops. Yeah. So with hyperadrenergic POTS, part of the reason my heart rate gets so high. So hyperadrenergic POTS, or hyperPOTS as it's called a lot of times, because it's like POTS on steroids, even more extreme a lot of times than most POTS. So because hyperadrenergic, so you have a lot of adrenaline a lot of times that seemingly goes off. I mean, it's definitely more when you stand up, but even lying down, sometimes you get adrenaline surges, which increases your heart rate drastically. And it can either, or I should say do both, it can raise and lower blood pressure. So you get both a mixture of the fainting, I've never fainted, but the dizziness that comes with low blood pressure. But you also get things like being drenched in sweat. So I'm always warm. Feeling jittery, racing thoughts, things like that come when you have an adrenaline surge. And then also the inevitable crashes after the adrenaline surge.
Does anyone have any other questions for Sarah?
I have a question.
Okay.
So I haven't been subtype or anything, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a cardiologist who seems to know something about POTS. But I feel like I get this like adrenaline surge. How do you fall asleep? I struggle with that.
It's a mix of hydroxyzine and clonidine. Those are the two things, because what I used to do is literally my sleep would flip around the clock. So I would be sleeping like from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and it would just keep going around the clock at 2 p.m. to 6 a.m. or crazy times like that. So clonidine and hydroxyzine. And they work pretty darn well for me, at least.
Yeah.
And my friend who actually recently diagnosed with hyperadrenergic also is on the clonidine, and it's worked well for her too.
Great. I don't have it every day, but don't know what to do about that issue at the moment.
That's definitely one of the more frustrating ones. Like, you're so fatigued you can barely move a muscle, but yet your body has an adrenaline rush, so you can't fall asleep. Any other questions?
Jinx. Well, before we sign off and everything, thank you again to Renee for coming and explaining your story and research. And I'd also like to remind the people who at least know me pretty well that I am not the average case of POTS. I am extremely high functioning in terms of what I'm able to do and accomplish, which I am very grateful for. But like Dysautonomia, again, plugging Dysautonomia International's Instagram page, they'll have many statistics on the fact that like 50% of people with POTS cannot hold a steady job. Many people with POTS, I think 25% of people with POTS, I don't remember. Never mind. I don't brain fog. But there's a lot of statistics on their Instagram that explains a lot of things. And I'm definitely not, don't think that I'm the normal when it comes to POTS. I know a lot of people here know me pretty well. I'm not the normal POTS patient, so don't think it's as easy as that. I know Sarah Compton, she and I went to the Field Museum over the summer. She can tell you that I definitely cannot survive standing throughout the day. I go in a wheelchair instantly because I know I'm going to feel like crap afterwards if I stand. And that's pretty much the only thing you can see in terms of how POTS affects me. You can't see anything else unless I let you see it, which is very rare. I don't. Yes, you do got me on the ramps. Appreciated that. But yeah, so unless I'm having an extremely horrible day, my roommates don't even see how POTS affects me on the daily. They'll see, a big thing. I don't know if Renee, I know Sarah deals with this as well. When we eat meals, since blood goes to your gut to help digest everything, since people with POTS have less blood, when blood goes to their gut, they feel more faint and they can get colds. And laying down after you eat helps a lot, and it lets the blood settle out, so you're not fighting for where the blood goes to your brain or to everything else, which is also why I think I don't eat as much as I should, because I'm trying to go to classes and trying to think and actually function, and I don't want my body to be fighting against my digestive system. So there's a lot of little tidbits here and there.
Yeah, I haven't eaten since 12 because I didn't want to be dead for you guys.
No, it's definitely not a good thing. But yeah, there's just a lot of small things like that. So if anyone's ever curious about anything like that, I'm always open to talk. My life is an open book at this point. So thank you all for coming. I had a very low turnout today, but I appreciate the rest of you for coming. And hopefully this recording, people will end up watching when we send it out over email.
Before you guys go, I do want to run over a few of the takeaways that we have here. Some of them we already said before, but POTS is not all in your head. Don't let anyone tell you that. Had plenty of doctors tell me that. I know, Stephanie, you've had that too. And awareness is key, and believe those with POTS.
And go study POTS at one of these institutions because you will be the specialist in your field.
Yes. But even as I know, Sarah is going to be a PA. The rest of us are hopefully going to go to medical school and become doctors. Tell your peers about it. Just simple symptoms. My gastroenterologist is the one that ended up leading me to my POTS diagnosis, which you would not expect. So just awareness from other doctors, just putting the pieces together is super important to helping people get diagnosed quickly. So never discount any information, which is why we started this organization. Even if it only helps a couple people, hopefully those people will help more people, and the domino effect will happen. So, well, thank you guys so much for showing up. We really appreciate you. Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from now.
No, 1 week.
1 week from now.
Yes.
1 week from now, November 3rd. We have a lot of work to do. It will be covering mast cell activation syndrome, which is a syndrome that both me and Sarah have. Renee, do you have that? I forget.
I do get this flushing on the side of my face and rashes and itchiness, maybe. A lot of congestion.
So we will dive deep into that next week and do a presentation on that. And we will have a couple guest speakers as well on our following meeting before then. I think it's November 17th, if I'm remembering correctly. Before our Thanksgiving break. And then we won't have any more meetings until
17th.
the first week of December, I believe. And that'll be our last meeting of the semester. We'll just be going over what we're going to plan out for next semester and any thoughts and constructive criticism along the way. So only 3 more meetings for the rest of the semester. But it's been a wild semester so far, and I appreciate all of you guys' support. So I won't keep you any longer. I don't want to bore you, but thank you so much for showing up.
And thank you, Renee, again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.